Saints going on the road to Denver. We got to see our first taste of Taysom Hill last week as the quarterback. And I have to say, overall, I was pretty impressed because I wasn't sure what we were going to get as far as his passing capabilities went. And there was times where it didn't look pretty, for sure, especially early on in that first half. But as he kind of got settled into that game, he targeted Michael Thomas on a consistent basis. He wasn't afraid to take shots down the field. While he had one really kind of meme-ish, like laughable throw down the field where it was pretty much a duck, 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 and Emmanuel Sanders had to pretty much come back, 15 yards, come back to the ball to come get it because it was so drastically underthrown. He did have a play where he should have hit Emmanuel Sanders on a 50-plus yard bomb, and it was a beautifully thrown ball, a beautifully caught ball. It was definitely a touchdown. Gets called back on a holding penalty, but he showed that, if he is able to set his feet, he does have enough arm strength to launch it down the field. That's something he's not going to be afraid to do. He's not going to be afraid aggressive when the opportunity presents itself. So when you mix that along with the fact that he's going to run and kind of like a Cam Newton, he's going to be a factor at the goal line, well, then that offers up Taysom Hill having a pretty decent floor, even going on the road against the Denver Broncos in this one, who I know defensively had a great game last week. But the thing about the Denver Broncos is that they have not been consistent on either side of the ball really this entire season. But two, the best way to move the ball against them is to kind of throw the ball, and they kind of utilize that play action and get Taysom Hill out on the edge. I believe they should have some success against this Denver Bronco defense. And like pretty much any game that Taysom Hill is the starting quarterback, he's going to have the potential for rushing touchdowns. And he's going to be utilized in some capacity to that way. I know that they have a big emphasis on him not taking unnecessary hits while he's actually the quarterback. But still, at the end of the day, the nature of his game is to be an athlete, is to be a playmaker. That's not going to go away. And as you saw last week against the Atlanta Falcons, they are going to still be willing to use him in power sweep type of situations. They put a big jumbo formation in there last week, and their full plan was to use Taysom Hill as a goal line runner in that situation. So they're not going to be afraid to do those type of things, even with Taysom Hill now being the starting quarterback. Frankly, in my opinion, until further notice. I know they kept saying maybe 2 to 3 weeks for Drew Brees. He's on IR now, so it's going to be at least 2 weeks from now. With them consistently coming out with all of these fractures and a punctured lung, I mean, it sounded like the guy's entire rib cage is pretty much fractured at this point. I don't see how he's back in a few weeks. I would really be surprised, honestly, if he was back before the playoffs. So I really, truly think Taysom Hill might be the starting quarterback of the Saints moving forward. And I think he's his top high floor streaming option in that time because of his rushing capabilities, because there's a lot of weapons on this offense. It also offers him a higher floor than I think he probably would normally have in any other team as far as passing the football goes too. So Taysom Hill actually comes in at QB 13 for me on the week. I feel pretty good about him being a high floor streamer if you've been going that route anyway with Taysom Hill here. In fact, I have more faith in what Taysom Hill will give me from a fantasy standpoint on the road in Denver than I probably would with Drew Brees, quite honestly, with the way he's played this season and being on the road and everything like that. So, yeah, I'm okay if you're firing up Taysom Hill. Remember, it's QB 13, so just outside of my QB ones, but definitely a guy you can consider depending on what it is that you're looking for in your roster construction this week. Now, here's the problem. Because he is a factor at the goal line and because we saw for the first time ever Alvin Kamara not get a reception while being healthy and out on the field, there is now a whole new floor that goes to Alvin Kamara that we never thought would be possible before. Because what we saw last week, and Kamara was a little bit banged up. He's been limited in practice all week long with a toe issue. He's going to be good to go, though. He was still able to get on the practice field. We still fully expect him to be able to play on Sunday. But he's still splitting carries, essentially, with Latavius Murray. Now, I don't know if Sean Payton and Taysom Hill are going to make a more concerted effort on their part to make sure that Alvin Kamara gets targeted in this game against the Denver Broncos, not just because he's Alvin Kamara and that's what he does, but because this offense is better when Alvin Kamara is a big factor in the passing game with his playmaking ability when he's out there on the edge, just as an effective receiver. And really, he should be a tremendous security blanket to make things really easy on Taysom Hill too, because you can dump it off and you don't have to throw it very far. You can get great games because he's Alvin Kamara. So it makes every sense in the world that maybe they'll make more of an effort to make sure he's involved in this game plan. Unlike last week, where it seemed like the effort was made to make sure Michael Thomas knew that just because this isn't Drew Brees, you're still going to be able to get the football. So we'll see what happens there, but you still have to be very concerned that for the first time in Alvin Kamara's career with Taysom Hill at quarterback, he wound up going for 0 receptions. So there's a whole new floor going into this game for Alvin Kamara. He just doesn't normally have. It's already not a great matchup for running backs on the ground as it is either. And between that and Taysom Hill being a goal line vulture, obviously, I'm not saying that you're going to bench Alvin Kamara. That's not what don't get it twisted. You have to start Alvin Kamara. But what I am saying is that his days of being a counted on top 5 RB1 really may be in question now with Taysom Hill at the quarterback position. We're going to be watching this game very intently to see what the game plan is and what they do to maybe rectify or change from what they did the first week against the Atlanta Falcons with Taysom Hill quarterback last week. Now, what we do know is that Michael Thomas is definitely the number 1 target for Taysom Hill, and he's not afraid to throw him the football, and he will throw him the football pretty consistently throughout this game. So I think Michael Thomas here, good matchup because, like I said, against Denver Broncos, throwing the football on the perimeter is the way to attack this defense. I think Michael Thomas is a very safe floor in this game. I don't know how high scoring of a game this is going to be. Saints defense is playing much better over the past few weeks. I think with Taysom Hill, their overall philosophy, and I talked about that going into last week's game, and it pretty much proved true in my eyes, that their overall philosophy is going to be control the ball and play good defense. Now their defense is back and healthy and playing more up to the level that we frankly expected them to be able to play since the beginning of the season. We just didn't see it until the past few weeks or so now. So I think between that and that it's going to be in Denver having a solid defense, I think there's a chance here this winds up being kind of a low-scoring game. So I don't think you can go into it with the idea that Michael Thomas has a huge ceiling unless he's able to find the end zone, but he definitely has a floor, I believe, of at least 80 yards in this game with at least 5 to 6 receptions and could easily get more than that if he can find his way into the end zone or if he gets double-digit targets again like he did a week ago where he becomes the focal point of Taysom Hill, he could easily have more than that too. So just Michael Thomas has a great floor. He's going to be a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1, like he will be for me for most weeks, quite frankly. Comes in at wide receiver 13 for me on the week, so very high-end wide receiver 2, just missing outside that wide receiver 1 level in the top 12. You'll be fine with him. Like I said, with him, the good news is the good feeling you had is that he had his best game of the year. He had his most targets on the year with Taysom Hill at quarterback, so you're not as concerned about the change from Brees to Hill in this situation. However, you should be concerned about Jared Cook. I don't think Jared Cook is a guy you can play. Not only was he not involved in the offense at all last week, but even with Drew Brees, this is a guy who's been hardly involved in the offense so far this season. While the tight end landscape has absolutely 100% been a complete mess for everybody, I don't see why you can't find somebody who at least has a more of a chance to score a touchdown or at least more of a chance to get 5+ targets at the tight end position than a Jared Cook out there available in a week where there's no bye weeks to begin with. You should be able to find somebody who at least has a better floor with the opportunities you can expect from them than Jared Cook would be for you. So I'm not playing Jared Cook. Just a quick tidbit on Manuel Sanders. It was good to see that the 2 shots that they took were both to Sanders last week. I know this is on paper, a bit of a revenge matchup. The expected target share, it's just not there for me to be wanting to play in Emmanuel Sanders, even in a game that could be a revenge here narrative for him. He's somebody who really is just more of a wide receiver 5. You're not really going to be looking to play in your lineups, especially since this is in Denver and not in New Orleans. So let's move on to the Denver side of the football where Drew Lock's going to play. He's going to be good to go. I don't feel really particularly great about any of these players that you might be considering from a fantasy standpoint. Melvin Gordon, Philip Lindsay obviously would be the top guys that you're trying to consider whether or not you should play them. But even when the Saints weren't playing good defense, you still couldn't really run the ball effectively against them. Some running backs have had success in the receiving game. But even so, like I said, I expect this to be a low-scoring game. I don't expect to be able to run the ball particularly effectively. And while they both had good games last week, we've had plenty of weeks now where the Denver Bronco rushing attack has just been ineffective, even in better matchups than playing against the New Orleans Saints. I have Melvin Gordon at RB27, so I have him as a higher-end RB3. I think you can still play him as a flex because the expected volume he's going to get between the carries and the passing game, even if he splits carries with Philip Lindsay, we know he'll be much more involved in the passing game. And that's actually where running backs have had some success is when they receive the ball out of the backfield against these linebackers. So Melvin Gordon, I think, has an okay floor heading into this matchup. It's not going to be what it was last week. He's not going to score 3 touchdowns. I can guarantee you that. But I think you're going to have to hope for him to fall into the end zone in order for him to give you an RB2 performance that you would hope for out of Melvin Gordon on a week-to-week basis. I just think there's going to be a lower floor out of him coming into this game. I would not play Phillip Lindsay because Lindsay's not involved in the passing game, because he's fully dependent on what he can give you in the rushing attack. And it's usually at best 50-50 with Melvin Gordon as far as those carries, usually a few less carries than a Melvin Gordon. There's just not a ceiling to be had there in this match against the Saints where I would be considering playing Phillip Lindsay at all in my flex position if you were looking to go that route. So that brings us to the wide receivers. Noah Fant, I think, is the only must-play for the Denver Broncos. We'll get that out the way. He's a top 10 tight end. Even though it's not pretty, his talent alone will continue to make him a top 10 tight end, I think, no matter what the matchup is. Even though it's not a great one here, I have him as top 12 this week, but still a tight end one for those 12-team leagues. The big question is the wide receivers. Who can you play any of these wide receivers? Because, again, it's not going to be a great matchup. Marshawn Lattimore, I do believe, is supposed to be back this week, so that means he'll probably be on Tim Patrick, I would say, most of the time. Plays more in the perimeter of where Marshawn Lattimore plays, has been more of the bigger play wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. Guy who's playing the Cortland Sutton role. There's not much of a ceiling when it comes to these Denver Broncos wide receivers, I believe, in this matchup. I think guys like Tim Patrick, I think guys like Jerry Jeudy have now gotten to the point where there are certain matchups that you can play them. And you can expect a decent floor, and you expect targets out of them. You know what their roles are going into it. This is not a game in which I'm looking to attack at all for the Denver Broncos. So outside of Melvin Gordon, outside of Noah Fant, in a week in which there's no more bye weeks, or isn't bye weeks at least for this week, I would have to think that you can find better plays than a Tim Patrick, who comes in as a mid-level wide receiver for Jerry Jeudy, who's about in the same territory for me this week as well, than having to go in either one of those directions really for this match against the Saints. So Melvin Gordon, okay, RB3, Noah Fant, a low-end tight end one, just given the landscape. Outside of that, I'm not really looking to attach myself to any Denver Broncos for this game against the Saints, but the way their defense has been playing as of late, which has been tremendous and back up to snuff, quite frankly. So let's move into our next game. Let's move into the 49ers. Let's move into the Los Angeles Rams. This game going into Los Angeles. First time these two teams met, the San Francisco 49ers actually put the smackdown on the Los Angeles Rams, and they're coming out of the bye week this week. Now, there's still the same JV version of the 49ers that we're having to see because of the injuries, but they may have some reinforcements on the way. Raheem Mostert may be back. Tevin Coleman may be back. They're both listed as day-to-day. Here's what I will say. I started off the week fully expecting Raheem Mostert to definitely be back this week. However, he's only been able to practice in a limited capacity Wednesday and Thursday. We won't find, because they're on the West Coast, we're not going to find out until later on in the day what he's able to do today. And while he's been designated to return, they still have not activated him as of yet off the IR. Because I was expecting him to be able to come in and be a full participant in practice at some point this week. Now, maybe if he's able to do that today, then he'll definitely be good to go, and that he'll have that full participant in practice under his belt. And as a result of that, I have Raheem Mostert as somebody who is a must-play, is an RB2 heading into this ball game. I have him an RB23. While it's not a great matchup on paper against the Rams with the way they've been playing, especially in the run defense game, we know what Raheem Mostert can do, and we know how much the 49ers offense need a next-level playmaker in their offense right now with no George Kittle. They're not going to have Brandon Ayuk. He's on the COVID reserve list. Deebo Samuel himself is also day-to-day. We'll talk about his fantasy value in a little bit. No Trent Williams in this game, so their offensive line is not going to be as sharp as it normally is. They need that next-level game maker. So if Raheem Mostert is back in this lineup at all, I do expect him to be the workload guy. I expect him to be the guy they lean on to generate the majority of their offensive production in this game. That's why I still have him as an RB2, but I am a little bit concerned because he's not coming back as strong on the practice field as I was expecting him to at this point. So we're going to have to see what happens. Still listed day-to-day. We may not get a true update until we get into the weekend. So make sure you're following us at BellyUpMDFF Show, because we'll keep you up to date there. Tevin Coleman, from what I understand, they seem to be leaning that he'll be expected to go, although he's kind of in the same boat of a Raheem Mostert because he's been limited to practice and considered day-to-day as well this entire week. But from what I hear, Coleman has maybe more of a chance to suit up. They feel more confident about him being on Sunday than Mostert at the moment. So just a situation we're going to have to watch when it comes to this backfield. Here's what I will say. Let's run down the scenario where Mostert does not play, and it's Tevin Coleman and it's Jerick McKinnon and maybe a Jeff Wilson. I don't know if I'm touching the 49ers backfield if it's not named Raheem Mostert in this matchup against the Los Angeles Rams.